Hi, good evening. Welcome along to the Transfer Show. Calvin Phillips to West Ham is very nearly done. But will Chelsea get the striker they want? And will Newcastle bring in a midfielder? Well, keeping across all of it for us, Melissa Reddy and Mark McAdam this evening. So, a week to go, and there's plenty in the offing.
Desperate to win the title, but not desperate to sign players.
If I give him 10, 15 games in a row, he will play good. I didn't give him to me. I feel so responsible of that.
We're always alert and we're always doing work if we can improve the team or improve the squad.
Hopefully he can play the minutes that he deserves and I could give them to him.
Obviously a club like Atletico Madrid is a big club in European football.
Disappointing, firstly, because we felt like we were making some headway on a couple.
Anybody in the frame in terms of positions?
Loads.
Positions
Lots.
that you want to strengthen?
Loads and lots.
We don't believe him. No, I'm going to start with a phrase that I've started with since January the 1st, every day since January the 1st. Let's start with Calvin Phillips. Now, it's nearly done. Melissa, nearly done. When are we expecting it to be confirmed, his move to West Ham?
Quite soon, because, like we know, it is in the closing stages, the agreement between West Ham and Manchester City for a loan deal. We do expect it to include an option to purchase. And we know how close this is because Calvin Phillips travelled yesterday to undergo his medical and then tie up all the formalities of a deal today. The other clue that we have that the announcement is on the horizon is Pep Guardiola wishing the midfielder well and hoping that he gets the minutes he deserves and that Guardiola couldn't give to him.
If I give him 10, 15 games in a row, he will play good. I didn't give him to me. I feel so responsible of that. But at the same time, I'm honest with me. As I've a disposal players, a squad, and have to decide what we are looking for different things. And only I can say is the grateful I am for his behavior and on and off the pitch for many, many situations. But and hopefully that he can find the minutes, like he can come back. And next season we'll see what happens. And he finally go to West Ham. There is no one person that we don't want or wish him all the best in his short time, 4 or 5 months in London.
And given he was very much a part of the first team squad, he was obviously came in for a lot of money. Are there any plans to bring any first team players in before the deadline?
I don't think so.
So, Pep loves Calvin Phillips. Mark doesn't play him. Is he a David Moyes type player?
Well, we've seen historically that David Moyes likes to recruit from Premier League proven players, and Calvin Phillips is without question that type of player. So therefore, he ticks the boxes with regards what David Moyes likes to do in the transfer window. You have to just go back to the summer when he was linked with the likes of Harry Maguire and Scott McTominay. Premier League proven. This boy is certainly that. When you look at the bigger picture for West Ham, this could be seen as a huge coup because this is a man that's won the Premier League and the Champions League. He's coming out of one of the greatest teams at the moment in world football at Manchester City. And they've been able to attract an England international to East London. That shows the pulling power they still have in the window. And interestingly enough, actually, he's a player that was watched by West Ham for a number of months and even years before he joined Manchester City. They were in the market for a number 6 type player, and Calvin Phillips was identified as someone that could potentially be a big player for West Ham. So they're getting the player that they've been watching for some time. He's a great...
getting him with a point to prove now.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. He hasn't played, so he wants to show to everyone, particularly ahead of the Euros, that I can still do the business at the very highest level. Great personality, great character, great profile, great energy. He'd fit into that David Moyes midfield perfectly, and the style that David Moyes wants to play. He's high energy, high aggression, works hard. He'll generate those numbers. He'll get about the pitch, and that's everything that David Moyes wants. He wants an honest, hard-working midfielder. You look at Souček, you look at Ward-Prowse, you look at Bowen. They're all the same types of players. Honest, good characters, good profile. And I think one of the good things about Calvin Phillips is he can turn defence into attack really quickly. He's got that ability to find great passes. He can pick up some intelligent pockets. He'll play as a number 6, so he'll be that pivot and that person that can shield the back four and then play forward with pressure. And I think he'll bring so much to that West Ham side. But the fact that they can attract a player of his calibre from a team like Manchester City shows that West Ham are still right at the sharp end of the market, and once again, spending that money that they got for Declan Rice really wisely.
Yeah.
Listen, there is somebody who actually loses out in this transfer. It's me, because he's a great neighbour. I'm going to miss seeing him around the building. Exceptional guy, such a lovely character and personality, so warm. That smile is so effervescent, and it'll be missed, but it's...
Which is interesting, because Calvin Phillips says you never put the bins out, but anyway.
I want more about this.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
We didn't know that. That's an exclusive there, isn't it?
We'll get to that. So Calvin Phillips on his way out. City, though, have confirmed a signing today. Argentina midfielder Claudio Echeverri has signed for £12.5 million, but the 18-year-old will stay at River Plate until the end of the year.
Announcement early today about the signing of Claudio Echeverri. Can you comment on that at all, please?
Well, yeah, the club, Alex informed me a few minutes ago that it's done. So congratulations to be part of our club.
And Mark, a smart tactic this by Manchester City, because they've done it before and it's worked.
Yeah, they did it with Julian Alvarez, a player that they bought, loaned back, and then brought him back into the Manchester City when the time is right. So you'd imagine that to be very much the case here. We know that they're very astute and clever with the activity they've done in the transfer window. They identify young players that they want to bring into that setup. They've got an incredible academy that's developing players, you know, season upon season as well. So once again, not a huge name now, but Claudio Echeverri is certainly a player to look at in the future, because we know that Pep Guardiola doesn't make many mistakes in the transfer window. And if he spots something in a player, then there's no doubt that he'll probably go on to be a superstar.
All right, let's talk Chelsea now. They want to add to their attacking options. And Mauricio Pochettino says they'll be ready for any opportunities that come their way, but they will not panic buy.
I'm desperate to win the title, but not desperate to sign players. I am happy with the squad. I am so happy with the players that we have. And then, of course, if something happens, because you know very well, and we know very well that always the last week is the most dangerous week. We need to be ready for anything that can happen, you know, on the squad.
So, Melissa, what needs to happen? What needs to fall into place for Chelsea to actually do some business?
Well, it's like Mauricio Pochettino says there are so many moving parts. Now, we know for certain that Chelsea are interested in strengthening their forward options. And one person they're looking at is Aston Villa's John Durán. Now, the problem with them pursuing the Colombia international, or anyone else for that matter, because they do have a list of options that if they're absolutely pressed to do something, they can look at if they're available, is that will they get a buyer for Armando Broja? Will somebody come in for Conor Gallagher? These are equations that they need to work out. They've also got Nkunku coming back from injury. They've got Jackson to come back from the AFCON. So every little thing has a knock-on effect on what they will do. Now, like Pochettino is saying, there's no reason for Chelsea to panic. And I think they are quite calm, but they've been doing so much work behind the scenes to know that if it goes down to deadline day and they absolutely need to get a body in, I know that they've got 3 options that they've lined up that could potentially happen.
Do you know who those options are?
Well, Durán is definitely one that they've looked at. The other one is Callum Wilson, who I think a lot of clubs know that there is a potential to do something there if it comes down to it. But what we've seen with this window is that the profitability and sustainability rules are really affecting every quadrant of this window. I've got agents complaining to me saying, we can't get clubs to commit to taking our players because they actually don't know how their finances are going to roll. They have to get bodies out, and we're seeing that cycle.
Yeah. We've got some breaking news, actually, Mike.
Go on.
We've got confirmation. We started the show talking about Calvin Phillips, and confirmation now that Calvin Phillips has completed his West Ham medical in East London. So that deal is getting closer to being confirmed.
That's great breaking news. I didn't know that. Thank you, Mark. Right, so Melissa's just mentioned Callum Wilson at Newcastle. Newcastle in a similar position to Chelsea. Lots of moving parts for them to do some business. So, Mark, what do they have to do to get a midfielder in? Because we know they want one.
Yeah, we know that they're in the market for an 8, someone that can be that attacking midfielder because they've got injuries to Joe Linton and, of course, no Sandro Tonali because of that ban that he's currently serving. So this is a position that Eddie Howe would love to strengthen where possible. The problem is, as Eddie Howe has said so many times, PSR, FFP, they have to be super conscious about what they spend. They don't have a lot of flexibility with regards to the finances that are at his disposal. So therefore, it might mean they have to sell someone to bring someone in. And interestingly, Melissa said Callum Wilson, player that's in his 30s, loved up there, but potentially could there be some value by selling him? We know that there's been a lot of talk about Joe Linton as well, going into the last stages of his Newcastle contract. We know that there's been a lot of talk about Miguel Almirón as well and a link to Saudi Arabia. And, of course, there was a lot of talk about Kieran Trippier. We know that that one is very much dead in the water as things stand. So there are a number of players there that potentially could generate some funds. However, Newcastle still have to be super careful because it doesn't work in a simple way. You don't just sell a player for 12 million, 15 million, 20 million and then get that exact same amount of money to reinvest. It's all about the book price. It's all about the price on the books that they still have to pay. So, therefore, they could sell...
What does that mean? Explain that for us.
So, in simple terms, they paid 20 million for Callum Wilson from Bournemouth a number of years ago. However, they don't just hand over £20 million to Bournemouth and say, we've got Callum Wilson. The deal will be structured over 2, 3, 5 years. And Chelsea have done a lot longer in some cases. So, therefore, if they are halfway through the payments to Bournemouth that equate to 10 million... Therefore, the book price would be 10 million.
Okay.
So if they sold him for 15 million, they'd only have 5 million to spend, as opposed to the 15 that they'd get. So it has to be done very smartly. Now, every player's book price is different depending on the structure of the deal at the time. So that's something to keep an eye on. But, of course, Newcastle, Eddie Howe, Dan Ashworth have got to be super creative, super flexible. And based on some of the deals that they've already done over the course of the last 12 months or so, you'd imagine that they'd be looking to do a loan with an obligation that kicks in after July the 1st. Callum Wilson, another player that's just creating a little bit of noise at the moment.
Well, let's talk about Callum Wilson then. This is to both of you. So we've just spoken about Chelsea needing a striker. Newcastle need to get rid of someone to bring in a midfielder. Surely it's not rocket science. Sell Callum Wilson to Chelsea, get a midfielder, job done. I should be a director of football somewhere, surely.
Listen, I think even you would be banging your head against a brick wall in this January because the winter window is already tough. The pool of players is so small, but now with 2 international tournaments on the go and with PSR and so many clubs being so conscious of the fact that it's now coming with points deductions, if you're even just marginally over it, that no one wants to take risks that they ordinarily wouldn't have even blinked about in the past. And while, on paper, it looks quite an easy thing to work out, it's not, because as we've ascertained, people came here for transfer news, but they got an accountancy lesson free of charge from Mr. McAdams. So.
Indeed. All right. Now, Ange Postecoglou has been explaining the virtues of doing business early in the window, and he says there was some anxiety over whether they'd be able to strengthen at centre-half and in the forward positions. They have, of course, done that, and he says they might do a bit more.
We're always alert and we're always doing work. If we can improve the team or improve the squad, then we'll look to do that. And if there's potentially any outgoings, again we're kind of ready for that, depending on sort of what happens. But I think we're in a decent place where a lot of the sort of, I guess, anxiety going into it, knowing we really needed to just help the squad a little bit, particularly through this period. I think we're in a good place now.
And Postecoglou there. Right, some breaking news before we go to the break. Northern Ireland's record appearance holder, Stephen Davis, has retired from all football. Now, he's a real legend of the Northern Ireland national team. He made 140 appearances. He played for Villa, Fulham, Rangers, Southampton and others, but he's retired following a serious knee injury. Right, time for a break. When we come back, we've got news from Celtic and we'll hear from David Ornstein on Arsenal's plan to sign a striker. That and more to come. See you in a moment. So if you've been with us in the last few minutes, you'll know that Calvin Phillips has completed his medical at West Ham. As soon as we get any more news, you'll of course hear it here first. Now, Arsenal are one of the clubs yet to make a signing in this window, and that is unlikely to change. But the Athletic's David Ornstein joined us on Transfer Talk, on the podcast on Transfer Talk, and expects Arsenal to be busy in the summer.
In the summer, I do think Arsenal are going to really attack the market again, and we could well see a striker come in. They'll be really looking at the options, like many clubs will be. And so I think the excitement around Arsenal transfers probably needs to be put on hold for a few months. We know they like players like Hato at Ajax, but he can't move before turning 18. He turns 18 in March. There'll be other clubs in for him, and Ajax are trying to renew his contract. So it shows that Arsenal are thinking, and there will probably need to be some outs as well. So we need to keep a close eye on the likes of Thomas Partey, Jorginho, Emile Smith-Rowe, etc., going forward into the future, Eddie Nketiah. But right now, famous last words, quiet at the Emirates.
Yeah, quiet, but I like the phrase they're going to attack the market in the summer. If they do, Melissa, who will they be looking at?
Well, we can expect them to attack the market because Edu and Mikel Arteta have actually shown that they are very aggressively fixing the weaknesses and the blind spots in the squad over the last few summers. They've done some excellent recruitment to actually turn them into title challengers. And I definitely think they are looking at forward options. What I do know, and as Ornstein mentioned there, they're looking at a younger profile for the future, for the next 5, 6, 7 years, but also they're looking at somebody that could help them guarantee immediate goals. Now, that latter profile is a tiny, tiny, tiny pool. And you have a lot of clubs, the top clubs around the world, looking for that elite striker. Now, we know some of the names that are doing the rounds. Ivan Toney, Victor Osimhen, all of them will be in the equation. What Arsenal will do is look to get the best player for how they think they can progress and move forward, also to combine with Gabriel Jesus, and importantly, how much money do they have to operate with? That will be determined by who they get rid of on the fringes, and as I'm told, they are expecting quite a few outs this summer, which would help them just up that kitty to get a world-class forward in.
What's your view on Arsenal, Mark?
Just really interesting listening to what Melissa says there. So what they want is someone who can guarantee them goals, but someone who fits that young player profile. And
no, two. So they're looking at both. They're looking at a younger player for the future. Yeah. That's
so they're two strikers.
It's a dual policy, and I think most clubs do that. They look at, right, what are we doing now for the summer that's going to help us hit the ground running for the next campaign, the one after that. But also, when we're looking at our long-term planning, where are we seeing gaps? Who are we letting go of that we now want to develop somebody else to come through and in the next few years take over the gauntlet?
Fantastic. No, it really sort of gives you an insight, really insightful there in terms of what clubs are trying to do. Then we know that the Cronkies, the Arsenal board, have backed Edu and Mikel Arteta strongly over the last 2, 3, 4 transfer windows. They're clearly seeing the starting point of an exciting project and a team that can challenge for the title, win silverware and take Arsenal back to where they want to go. The problem that they've got is they're shopping in a really small pool when it comes to where can we get these players that can guarantee us goals? Where can we get these young, talented players? Because we know that every single side in the Premier League and in Europe, they want to find the best young gems that they can develop and make into real superstars and then potentially sell on down the road. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out. We know that in this window that they're struggling with regards to their commitments to the profit and sustainability, hence why they had to do the David Raya situation as a loan with an obligation that kicks in after the 30th of June. So we know they're not going to be busy at the moment, but how they attack, as you say, the window after that will be fascinating. I think also it would be very dependent on how they get on this season. If they win the title, if they win silverware, or if they're left empty-handed, that will play a big factor on how much backing they get.
Yeah. The other thing to say on Arsenal as well, and they do their business so far in advance, like all the due diligence, all the heavy lifting, so that by the time the summer rolls in, they can just pull the trigger. Declan Rice was a year in the making from developing the sales pitch and stuff for him. So I have no doubt there will be some great business in the summer for Arsenal.
Indeed. Right, we've got an international transfer show coming up at 6:30 this evening, and no doubt they'll be talking about this. Reports around Bayern Munich midfielder Joshua Kimmich. Melissa, what can you tell us?
Well, Liverpool's position is that he's obviously a great player, one that they admire, but they have zero interest in him. Jurgen Klopp believes that Alexis McAllister is actually the perfect number 6 for the team in the system that they currently have. Very compact, so he's only defending in small spaces, which is quite aggressive, and he excels in that. He's also giving them options on the ball that they wouldn't get from a typical anchor. So he's still being the playmaker. You've got Szoboszlai and Curtis Jones usually alongside him doing the hard running. You've got Trent inverting and helping cover the spaces, as well as the centre-backs. So Liverpool are looking at their midfield at the moment, looking at the competitions they're still in and where they are in the league, and they're like, no, we're sitting pretty here. We're quite happy with our options.
Mark, in the Championship, a midfielder making a few waves, getting a bit of Premier League interest. Tell us more.
Yeah, Adam Wharton at Blackburn Rovers. Any Championship teenager that's playing week in, week out will be watched by every single Premier League side, because that's a great pool to recruit players from. We know that Crystal Palace have had an £18 million bid rejected. Talks continue. And Palace just deciding their next moves with regards to Adam Wharton. Clearly a talented player. John Dahl Tomasson has been speaking, and he says the fact that it's been rejected, brilliant for me.
OK, Mark and Melissa back at 7. Loads more to come from them. We'll be joined by the European football expert Andy Brassel. And also at 6:30, a little something special for you. The international transfer show. That's coming up at 6:30. Sky Sports News is next with the rest of all the sporting news.